Okay, now to explain a little bit better about promises. Well, you probably know what promises are in ClojureScript, so I am just going to show how we return promises and how we treat promises in ClojureScript. So again, we can do interop, meaning that, for example, in handle root, in the register get, sorry, we can just say, okay, call the handler, and then we get the result, get the response, and then we send the response here. You will probably know that this will crash because we don't have then here, because this is not a promise. We can basically do things like, for example, define a local variable for this handler and check if then exists and then call then and so on and so forth. So let's do that first, and then I'm gonna show the best way to do that. So to declare global variables, you use def. To declare local variables, you use let. And let basically means open a scope with some variables. The variables will be inside a vector. So for example, variable A will have the value 1, variable B will have the value 2, for example, and then plus A and B. If I evaluate this, the result is 3 as expected. So this is the way to do, and basically A and B will not exist outside of this scope. So if I, for example, try to run this all at the same time, well, it crashes because it's out of the scope. Well, in that case, crashed for a different thing, but basically it's the same. So first thing that I'm going to do, I am going to call this the response, and then I am going to put this inside a let. Response. Okay, now I have to get if something exists inside the response. I cannot call .then, otherwise it will become a function call. In the ClojureScript interoperability with JavaScript, properties are with //. So for example, if I want to know if then exists, I am going to basically do this. Either this or this. So every time I have a slash before something, and I have something like dot, or in the opposite situation, like then, this will become a property. So it will not call the function, it will just call the property. So in this case, I am defining a local variable called response, and I want to know if there's a then for the response. Let's just print this. Let's save, call curl, and as you can see, the result is nil. For people that are familiar with JavaScript will understand that this is kind of weird because honestly, it's not nil, it's undefined, but ClojureScript does not have a specific value for undefined. It basically treats everything as nil, meaning that you can basically check for nil and it will work. And the second thing is, how do I do an if in ClojureScript? Remember, everything in ClojureScript, every command, function call, and everything will be opening up a parenthesis. So let's suppose I define a global variable called a that have value 3. And I want to know if a is equal 3. So instead of doing a equals 3, that again, this will run 3. Equal is a function, so it will be like, sorry, I have ligatures here. Ligatures basically did this weird because this became /equal, and when I have the ligature, this will become like not equal. Sorry about that. some glitch on my editor, on my configuration. But basically this is a function, this is an equal. And here I have 3 free forms, top levels. It doesn't make sense for the ClojureScript. What does make sense is that if I open up a parenthesis and call equals, then this becomes a function call, and the function call equals tries to compare a with 3, and in this case will be true, and in this case, for example, it will be false. Okay, now how do I convert this to an if? So it's simple. Again, everything that's a function call, as operation or something in ClojureScript, you will open up a parenthesis. So this will basically be if, and if is keyword in the Clojure language, the closest that you know that will get to a keyword, and if accepts 2 or 3 arguments. The first one is the condition. So for example, if a equals 4, or in this case, if equals a4, if this happens, then you will do something. Let's say println is equal. You will see that this prints nothing. Let me clear the console for you. This prints nothing and returns nothing. So if I have a third argument because this is the first one, this is the second one, and this is the third one, now it runs something. It says it's different, and see that it returns nil. Again, ClojureScript is a functional language, meaning that everything is somehow a value or something, or returns a value or something like this. So if I do this, it will return 6, because basically it says if a equals 4, then returns 5, otherwise returns 6. So let's put this into our code. I want to get if then response, meaning if response have a then inside. You can do this kind of comparisons in ClojureScript basically because in ClojureScript, differently from JavaScript, everything is true except for false and nil. So 0 is considered true, basically. An empty string is considered true. Differently from JavaScript, when you have an empty string, this will be false. So for example, if I ask for not empty string, then it's false. In JavaScript, this will be true. And I can prove that because there's a macro, there's a command in ClojureScript that is exactly this. It will basically evaluate the code as if it was a JavaScript. So this is a JavaScript code, and as you can see, it's true, and in ClojureScript it's false. Okay, a little side step here, but basically if there is a then in the response, then we will call then and send a result as a response. Otherwise, we will just send a result as a response. So let me just call this response promise. And here it will be easier to understand that basically this is the response that's inside the promise, and then this is a response that's not a promise. Okay, so now if I run this and do a curl, it will work. And if I return a promise not resolve, again, I'm gonna show you a little bit better how to do promises, but if I wrap this around a promise, I will get the same like hello world. So to wrap global JavaScript objects, you have to use the special JS format. So JS promise, it will be the promise in ClojureScript. So I want to resolve this promise with a specific value. And if I do this, you'll see that I have hello world inside a promise. Okay, so for the next video, a better way to do this.